Hey everyone, here is my critical review of Kids 2009 article. And I just wanted to give you really quickly an introduction to the journal article. This journal article is basically a research and collaborative idea set from a variety of sources, suggesting that the number of students going into science are declining. And what we have noticed is that using information from Hunton and Lane's 2007 journal article and also using the resource, the National Science Foundation, it's noted that the number of degrees for bachelor's all the way through doctoral are dropping in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and specifically for this study in the field of geosciences. So what had happened is that the author recruited 86 pre-service teachers to give a 10-question survey about attitudes related to science. This survey was given to 27 rural, urban, and suburban school districts in northern Illinois. And those teachers surveyed two different levels, middle school through high school, basically grades 6 through AP Physics through those 27 school districts. What they analyzed and looked for was the age, the grade level, the gender, and they were given the option of answering a question of race. This data was encoded and analyzed, and ideally, this information will actually change the way that science research is actually focused upon. Over the past 60 years, scientists have come to the conclusion that there are a variety of gender and ethnic differences for why students are actually dropping at increasing rates in the field of science. The first idea is that there is cultural stereotypes and expectations. Next, there are biases of teachers. There is a lack of science opportunities, a lack of desire to do traditional science. There is an idea that the non-traditional students do not actually seek out science as an opportunity. People suggest that the idea that science is boring and not relatable, and there's a lack of role models in science. Finally, there's weak parental involvement and support. All of these ideas were summarized over the past 60 years or so, and through Hunton and Lane's suggestions, there were 4 ideas that were basically summarized for what we can do to find a solution for this dropping number of science students. Number 1, how science content is actually being provided to students needs to change. 2, we need to allow for equity in science and possibly even recruit students into science. Third, we need to remove the stereotypes of science, and we may even need to look into mentoring students for science. After this survey was given, kids reported that most students do not believe the original assumptions of science, being that scientists who are male and wear a lab coat and that do not have religious affiliations and that girls cannot be able to do science are no longer current in a lot of students' minds. However, there were 2 areas of concern that were brought forth, and these are that students are misinformed about the amount of mathematics that are required for science and that students do not actually relate with who a scientist actually is. These articles utilized a variety of sources. One particular one was a literature review from Scantlebury and Dale in 2008 that basically focused on the idea of the gender gap and focusing on differences between the ideas of ethnic minorities. One of the particular discussion points was the idea that women will not accept the grade of a C in a college course in science, whereas men will, and because of this, this may be due to the idea that students are decreasing in the numbers in the science fields. Additionally, the idea of a science benchwork scientist and the ideas of what a woman would feel that job would require is changing versus the idea of what a woman would want with a family. The idea of a benchmark scientist required for research would have to sit down in his lab or her lab and would not be able to make the time for a family. Another point that was kind of noted that I'm going to summarize really quickly is the idea of who actually administered the survey. 86 student teachers or pre-service teachers are actually given this survey, and they had asked the following questions. I think science is interesting. Scientists are mostly men who wear white lab coats. I might want to be a scientist. Science is too hard for me. I know a scientist personally. You can't do science without lots of math. Girls aren't good at science. Scientists can't be trusted. Scientists can't be religious, and my family would be proud of me if I were a scientist. While these questions were administered to students, one thing that kind of arose that kind of concerned me is how valuable the information was that was received. Since students were not required to note their race, the author still makes note of a lot of assumptions concluding due to race. Ergo, those informations are not valuable to this research unless this article may be biased in my personal opinion. Additionally, the pre-service teachers who had given this research article had noted that males had snickered and made inappropriate comments while students were filling out the question, girls are not good at science. There is no note of how the actual survey was given in the classroom. No one is sure if the test setting was silent and like a test setting itself, or if it was just kind of given as a, hey, there's 5 minutes of free time, go ahead and fill this out. Because of this, again, the survey results can be kind of biased in my personal opinion. Additionally, finally, there were 2,500 students that were actually given this survey. All of that information was streamlined into one particular person who worked for the author, and that person encoded and actually summarized all of the data that was related to this survey. But because of that one person being the only go-to for the information, how reliable is that data? This survey could be useful in the future of science. I believe that the survey needs to be pumped up, if you will, that additional questions need to be written, that it also needs to be applied to more students, that it cannot be simply just given to the students in the Midwestern Chicago area, that it needs to be applied to more of the United States, if not the entire world. Overall, the research is there, and I hope that in the future, when I possibly apply for my dissertation, that I am able to use some information like this. These are the resources that I have used. Hopefully you have time to read my critique and enjoy it. Thank you so much.